Hello there. Welcome to this episode of Force Ghost Conversations. This is your host, Anthony King, and this week I'm going to take a deep dive look into the Mandalorian Season 3 episode titled The Convert. Before we get started, I'm inviting you to join the conversation with us. We can be found on Twitter and Hive at Force Ghost Pod. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok just by searching Force Ghost Conversations. We look forward to connecting with you on those platforms. Also, please be sure to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on your listening site of choice. Plus, Force Ghost Conversations is now live on Patreon. If you're a fan of the podcast and would like to consider pledging your support, there will be a link in the episode description for you to check out the various tiers offered. Finally, please be sure to check out our TeePublic store to buy some Force Ghost Conversations merchandise. And without further ado, it's time to gather around the campfire for some Force Ghost Conversations. All right, everyone, welcome back to another installment of Force Ghost Conversations. And I am so thrilled to talk to you all about this incredible episode of The Mandalorian. And yeah, I'm excited to get into all of that. But first, we have, of course, some news. And boy, was this a wild news week here. I'm going to tell you what, we had a lot of ups and downs. And I'm going to get to all that, the Willow stuff towards the end of this session here, because I really want to dive into that and talk through the nitty gritty of it all and my thoughts on it. But first, there's some other news. So, a new trailer for Star Wars Jedi Survivor will be released on March 20th. And of course, we will be sure to do a live reaction in next Sunday's episode, so get ready for that. The game, of course, will be released on April 28th. 2023. So very shortly after Star Wars Celebration, we'll finally get this game in our hands. Also, panel reservation details have been announced for Star Wars Celebration Europe. It will be a similar process to how it was handled for both Anaheim and Chicago, which is, of course, an online panel selection. This will allow fans to enter a random drawing for admission to the specific panels each day on the Celebration stage, Galaxy stage, and Twin Sun stage, all weekend long. And of course, the panel selection system will close on Tuesday, March 21st at 11:59 p.m. GMT. So be sure to go to StarWarsCelebration.com in order to officially enter the drawing for yourself. I will repeat again, that is the only way that you can get access to the major panels. There is no longer any camping out overnight or getting there super early to get in line. Not the case. You get the code that says you are slated to go, or you're allowed to be in this stage room for this panel, for those early panels of the day. So for instance, the Lucasfilm Showcase panel, I believe the Ahsoka panel, etc. Those will all be through the lottery system. And if you get it, then you get to, of course, stand in line, of course, to get into there. But you'll get a wristband. They check your ticket to make sure that you should be there. You have a separate entrance generally. So all those details, of course, will be in the email when they send it out that you have been or haven't been assigned to a specific panel. But all those details are available on StarWarsCelebration.com. Of course, I will not be there this year, but all the details are available on their website. So be sure to check all that out. Finally, as I alluded to, I'm going to read the entire note that John Kasdan put out in regards to Willow and Volume 2. Now, Deadline reported earlier this week that Willow was canceled after season 1 on Disney+. Now, I, like many people, loved Willow, and I was absolutely crushed to see that there was a chance that it would not be moving forward. Both myself, Mrs. Force Ghost Conversations, we were deeply crushed at the possibility that this show would not be continuing. Especially after that great tease in the last episode, we really connected with these characters and the storylines that they were putting forth and the representation that was on screen for all of it. We wanted to see more and to continue where these journeys were going. Thankfully, John Kasdan took to Twitter to give us a lengthy thread about what actually is happening here. And as far as I understand, this is the first time that a Lucasfilm employee responded to this deadline article, and I think it's really well done. So, of course, I'm going to read all of it in verbatim here, so bear with me on this one. So, this is an exact thread that John Kasdan wrote, the showrunner and chief writer for the series. So, let's dive into all this here. So, this is the beginning of the thread here. Dear Willow supporters and vocal opposition, you guys get in here too. Writing to you today, one preposterously, criminally, and immeasurably lucky fool. The outpouring of kind words, support, and passion for our shabby, idiosyncratic little show has been nothing short of mind blowing and profoundly moving, not just for me, but for everyone who worked their butts off on it. We're all inexpressibly grateful and thrilled that you enjoy watching it, almost, as much as we enjoy making it. Even those of you who didn't enjoy it, yet stuck with it for 8 hours to critique each episode and let us know exactly which choices you weren't a fan of. That, too, is its own incredibly specific form of flattery, and we appreciate it. As the lifelong devotee of Deadline Hollywood, I also appreciate that punchy headlines drive clicks. So I understand how Willow canceled after one season on Disney Plus is fun and juicy. However, as I'm nearly certain I've had more conversations about this in the last couple of weeks than Nelly Andreeva, of whom I remain an ardent fan, I feel fairly confident that, if asked, neither I nor the folks at Lucasfilm would have actually characterized it quite that way. The truth is less splashy, but here it is. A decision was made last week to release our main cast for other series opportunities that may arise for them in the coming year. With all the TV and movies in production around the world, it feels unfair to limit an actor's availability without a clear sense of when you're going to need them again. It's further trivialized by the simple reality that the scripts we've been working on require just as many actors from our first season, with whom no such contractual hold exists. Nothing prevented Annabelle Davis, for example, from taking another show. But you better believe Mims appears in every single Volume 2 chapter. If you're asking what this means for you as a viewer, or me as the creator, here's what I think it means. Due to forces much larger and more intricate than I would ever pretend to fully understand, production of streaming shows is slowing down across the entire industry, and Willow won't resume filming in the next 12 months. But here's what's equally true. With the enthusiastic and unwavering support of Lucasfilm and Disney, we've developed and written what we hope is a brain meltingly fun, richer, darker, and better Volume 2, which builds on the characters and story of our first 8 chapters. The worm survives. Volume 2 is all about courage, desire, acceptance, and the comedy and beauty to be found in even the darkest places and moments. It's about the enemies we must inevitably confront both without and often far more insidiously from within. But above all, it's about the ineffable and enduring magic of friendship. I'm confident I speak for everyone involved when I say that we'd all like nothing more than to deliver Volume 2 on the scale expected and demanded by the story we're telling. Are we going into pre-production? Not right now. Does that mean we're never going to make it? Absolutely not. 3 weeks ago, we got a third season of Party Down, 13 years after season 2. Between seasons 2 and 3 of Atlanta, 4 years. Curb Your Enthusiasm seasons 8 and 9 had a hiatus of 6 years. Not to mention this little movie I love called Willow that didn't get its well-deserved sequel for 35 years. Perhaps the one thing Hollywood has consistently been great at over its entire history is servicing the appetites, no matter how obscure, of its consumers. And I have total confidence that if an appetite for more Willow persists, Disney, Lucasfilm, and this amazing cast and crew will satisfy it. Is now the best moment to campaign/demand more? I don't think so. I recommend preserving your outrage for the many real outrages in the world. The entertainment industry is in a moment of radical global upheaval. The terrain ahead is unknown. But do I think enthusiasm for the show will still be meaningful a year from now? Or two? Definitely. As we are all the people you recommended Willow to that can enjoy it whenever they want. But declaring it dead in the cultural in which we now live feels frankly as anachronistic as, I don't know, putting a Soundgarden cover in a fantasy show. As for me, Personally, I've been working on Willow for nearly 5 years. I had the privilege of playing in sandboxes built by George Lucas and stewarded with the deepest care and love by Kathy Kennedy for 9 years. If you've hated the castles I've built or helped build in those sandboxes, this news should come as a tremendous relief and welcome respite. If you've enjoyed some of it and want more, I promise you that whatever I have to offer will only be cooler, funner, and more exciting for the momentary break I'm afforded. I know the fandom can be divisive. I know sometimes people say mean things, but I gotta tell you, from deep inside, that has not been my experience at all. I love all you guys, and I relate and identify with every single person who is passionate about Star Wars, Indiana Jones, and Willow. Even if we crave slightly different things from them, I think an open dialogue and fan involvement only enriches these worlds as they grow larger, fuller, and more inclusive. I have the best job in the world, and if you think I don't deserve it, you're absolutely right. No one deserves to have this much fun at work. I love everyone I've had the tremendous good fortune to collaborate with these past 9 years, and I couldn't be more excited for what lies ahead. Ignore the bird, follow the river. I promise they'll take you to where you need to go. John. And then, of course, there's a picture of the end scene from chapter one, or volume one of Willow, where it shows them putting the book back on the shelf with the remaining 3 volumes on display. So thank you all for sitting through that there. I wanted to make sure that I got verbatim and on the record exactly everything that John Kasdan wrote in his Twitter thread. And of course, you can find that on Twitter itself at John Kasdan, his own handle there. Now, basically, the main takeaway from that is Willow is not canceled. It's not dead. It's not put into a box and never going to be opened up again. It's just taking a break for at least a year. I think that's smart. I think it's very transparent too. What he said there, for whatever reason, streaming services and the production companies, behind it, whether it be Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, etc., they're just slowing down on creating streaming programs right now. There was a massive boom, of course, when the streaming wars came out to be, and for whatever reason, maybe they've hit a plateau. They're fine with the subscriber bases that they've got. They're taking a strategy of less is more, fewer shows, more quality. I don't know. Whatever you think it is, for whatever reason, they are just reducing the number of productions that are going into production right now. So because of that, at least 1 year is what they're going to be, until they get into another pre-production cycle, perhaps for Willow. So it's just going on a brief hiatus here, whether it be a couple years, 1 year. They're going to come back at some point. I have full no doubt of that. So that's much better to me and more realistic, frankly, than just saying outright canceled. Like that's a clear indicator of it's never coming back, or at least it's not coming back anytime soon. So that's the glory of this to me. I'm glad that they're all still willing and ready to go into production of this when the time calls. I bet fans will still be watching it on Disney Plus, asking, continuing to have conversations about it, which of course we're still going to be doing here on Forest Coast Conversations. And just looking forward to what potentially a season of volume 2, frankly, could be at this point. So that is the main news for all of the Star Wars Lucasfilm galaxy this week. And just on the other side of this short break, we'll be back with a quick discussion, or not a quick discussion, but our deep dive discussion on The Mandalorian Season 3, the brand new episode titled, golly gee, what is the new episode called? Because I wanted to make sure I got it right before we get into it. The Convert. We'll be back very shortly, folks. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Force Ghost Conversations. I hope you enjoyed our Cloud City Gossip segment, as we did dive into a little bit of the tea, if you will, in regards to the Willow drama that took place this past week. So thank you again for making your way through all that, and through, of course, John Kasdan's lengthy Twitter thread. But of course, that is very important details, and I didn't want to mince words at all, so I had to read it directly from the source, if you will. It's very important here on Force Ghost Conversations that we accurately report the news that we're providing here, which is why you'll never really see us talk about rumors, etc. We wait for official confirmations. We're not in the rumor game, so to speak. We're here to talk the facts, report it to you all, and be honest and open about everything that we see. So thank you for listening to that. And of course, let's get into our Mando discussion right now. Of course, all spoilers from here on out for The Mandalorian Season 3. Brand new episode. I believe it's chapter 20, 19, somewhere in that range. I can't remember off the top of my head. I think it's 19. And it's called, of course, The Convert. So, spoiler warning here. If you haven't watched the episode yet, pause this podcast now. Go watch the episode on Disney Plus, and then come right back to this moment in time because I thought it was a really great episode, and I hope you do too. But let's have that conversation about all this and what you're all thinking about it. So, for the episode, the podcast episode that I've got here planned, I think I'm going to do something very similar to what I did last week, which was more of an open discussion rather than kind of going through what I typically do for episodes, where I watch it a few times, write down beat by beat notes going throughout the episode, and write out a script that I have. But I think because of my schedule, because of doing 2 episodes a week, Bad Batch, etc., that we're doing with Mrs. Forster's Conversations released on Wednesdays, and of course being a full-time employee at my job, I'm also a part-time grad student, which is also in its own self a full-time job, and just being a general person with other things going on in my life, there's a lot happening right now, and I try to do my best to give a little bit to everything here, but uh, you know, I just want to try it up a little bit here and see how we're all liking the new format. I liked what I did last week a lot too, because that felt very organic and to the point, and just really conversational piece of this podcast, which is kind of what I always want to do. So I think it's great that we changed up every now and then, but of course we will mix and match whatever we do here, and feel free to give your feedback as well. Hit us up on all the social media channels so you can voice your feedback, whether you like this version of the podcast or maybe prefer other versions, etc. I'm open to all feedback as well. So yeah, let's talk about this episode a bit here. This is The Convert, The Mandalorian, the new episode. Frankly, I just want to start at the beginning here. Why this episode works for me. I was a big fan of the Book of Boba Fett. I was a big fan of it as it aired. I was a big fan that they took risks in that show, that they didn't feel confined just because the book was the show was called The Book of Boba Fett, that they had to do 6 to 9 episodes exactly with Boba Fett being the protagonist in every episode. No, they said we can do 2 episodes where he maybe only appears for a short minute or two. It's continuing the story that is going to play out in the rest of the season. If you don't have those Mandalorian episodes there of the Book of Boba Fett, when he shows up later in the season, in the later episodes, episode 8 and 9 of the Book of Boba Fett, it's going to be confusing, absolutely confusing as to why the Mando shows up. You don't have the context of where he's at. Why does Grogu show up there? Why is he a bit stronger in the Force? Why is he connected? You don't have these answers here that really help to play out where the rest of Boba Fett is at this point. And what were they going to do? Release them as special episodes on Disney Plus? I don't know. I just don't think that was really feasible. And again, I applaud the creators, Jon Favreau, Dave Filoni, all those involved, Rick Famuyiwa now at this point, for having the gusto to not feel like they were put into a box in regards to the stories that they're able to tell. And frankly, they've taken that model and done it now with The Mandalorian proper. They just did a whole episode here where 95% of it was about Dr. Pershing and world building on Coruscant and showing what the new Republic looks like at this point in time, right? Where several years beyond Return of the Jedi, the New Republic is up and running. And we're finally starting to see those connective bits and tissues that lead us to the sequel trilogy. This is where we've always been planning to go. I remember seeing those articles from 2019 when the Mandalorian was announced, or 2018 even. I think I remember all of that lead up. So the exact dates escape me, of course, but Jon Favreau has been very clear that they were always planning to connect to at least show somewhat of the first origins of the First Order, connect to the sequel trilogy. I mean, it would be asinine to think that they wouldn't at some point. And it's very fascinating that I've kind of connected some dots over the course of episodes here between our podcasts that the Bad Batch is doing so as well. The Mandalorian is clearly hinting at something that is going to be connecting to episode 9, whether it be Exegol, the cloning, etc. That's great. I love that we're moving the needle forward to the sequel trilogy. And I also love that we're able to give characters in this Mandoverse the light of day. I love that we're able to let uh, Omid Abtahi give it his all in this episode, playing Dr. Pershing. I always want to say General Pershing. Yeah, General John Blackjack Pershing from World War One. No, Dr. Pershing, of course, also known as L52, his number from the amnesty program. This is really excellent. Really excellent. And I frankly love the world building on Coruscant in this episode. I mean, golly gee, I wrote down so many of the things here that just stood out to me in regards to um, the greatness of world building in this episode, right? So you got the mysis blossoms here. Of course, I live in the Washington, D.C. area. So, of course, cherry blossoms are very popular around here and is a very big tourist attraction. So, when basically the taxi driver for Dr. Pershing is telling him all the sites that he needs to see, that would probably be something that someone visiting the capital area would be told to go see too. And it makes sense that the capital of the galactic of the New Republic would also have some type of memorial blossom, I guess, or some special in bloom season. It just makes sense around, especially the connecting to living American culture here. There's the Galactic Museum, of course, where they talk a little bit about the creation of the hyperdrive routes and the systems for hyperdrives in an exhibit, which, of course, I believe is a tie to the High Republic era or somewhere around there. Like, of course, that's a lot about phase one of the High Republic is talking about the hyperspace routes. So go read those books if you want to get more into that and how paths are created and etc. So that's all fun stuff. We got a, a lot of notes here about Coruscant days of the week, which I've learned from Star Wars Explained. Go check out on their channel on YouTube all the cool stuff that they do, where they really break down all the hidden canon notes about Star Wars. Apparently, there are only 5 days of the week at Coruscant, with I guess technically whatever the last day of the week is, Tong's Day. Which Tong's Day, am I right? as is alluded to in the later part of the episode. The March of the Resistance, too. Of course, the classic theme that John Williams created for Episode 7, The Force Awakens, especially can be heard when the Resistance arrives on Takodana, is an in-universe theme, right? You can hear it being played at the park where Aaliyah Kane and Dr. Pershing go for like a fun date kind of thing. You can hear it in the background, and I love that. It's almost similar to how in Solo and in Rebels you'd hear the Imperial theme be used as a kind of tactic, a recruiting technique, an actual march, a parade, I guess. Significant song, if you will. Like it seems like very similar to how in the US here we have our specific Stars and Stripes Forever kind of stuff. It all makes sense. And the Coruscant Accords, right? It's a piece of legislation. Maybe that's how the new government operates here in the New Republic world. So you're getting a sense of all of this here on Coruscant world building, and of course, what life is like in the New Republic, which of course includes an amnesty program, amnesty housing. How do we? Of course, I forgot to mention too the Peak of Umate, one of the highest peaks of the Minari Mountains on Coruscant, and was the only outcropping of natural stone on the planet's surface. I mean, wow, that's pretty wild here. But of course, you're seeing how the Empire is dismantled, and they have to answer the questions of what does amnesty look like in the post-galactic Civil War. Is every person that was a part of the Empire a bad person? Perhaps not. They have to reintegrate into society somehow. Every Civil War has to grapple with this question at some point. Do we take out everybody that was a part of the old regime? How do we take any knowledge and information that they used before? Do we use the entire system that was set up before and just put our stamp on it? These are great questions that every government that is been through a civil war has to tackle at some point. And of course, we're now seeing the ramifications of the choices of the New Republic, which I believe includes choices made by Leia and Mon Mothma. So, who really is at fault here? Because clearly, we're seeing that the New Republic is not the best, right? What kind of freedom are these people in Amnesty having here? They went to these, uh, you know, reintegration camps, which is being, forced learning camps to assimilate to this culture of the New Republic, right? Uh, they're forced to live in these kind of segregated communities here in a way, um, where they're clearly forced to do a certain job, and they're asked how they're doing all the time. They're restricted from certain areas that they can go. So really, what is freedom like in this world? If you're giving amnesty to these people and you're not giving them full freedom, then what are you afraid of? You're still operating out of fear in this government and in this system. So really, who is at fault here? Really, I mean, I know Mon Mothma was really in charge of demilitarizing and moving forward the new government and all that stuff, and Leia was uh, coming up almost a warmonger, of course, in Bloodline, and yeah, that's really powerful here. I don't know who's at fault here because they're trying to set up a system, and setting up a government is incredibly hard, especially when you're trying to set up a democracy. I get that. And how does a new government show up overnight? It's difficult. I get that. And it's difficult to create a whole amnesty system and to have all these chefs in the kitchen. And how do you stop having corruption and bureaucracy? I mean, these are great questions with real world implications and dealings that we all must consider. What are our own political beliefs? What are our actions? Who are the politicians that we back up in regards to these core issues? I don't know. I would love to have an answer for you all, but I just absolutely don't at this point. But it's great. We're seeing how an empire is dismantled and how a new republic takes its place here. It's tough. It's tough. And a big question that I had coming out of this episode is, what in the world does Aaliyah Kane have to benefit from here? Of course, at the end, she basically turns in Dr. Pershing. Dr. Pershing is the scientist that was on Moff Gideon's ship, and he was working with Moff Gideon and the client from the beginnings of The Mandalorian. He was taking Grogu and doing experiments on him. That was the whole point of finding Grogu. And of course, we learned that he was doing cloning. It's been confirmed now. He was trying to do some genetic cloning work to create genetic attributes, or taking genetic attributes from a couple of hosts to create the best clone replicant possible. So, kind of like a Jurassic World sequence with the Indominus Rex, where they took kind of the best aspects of every dinosaur and living animal creature possible to give it the best attributes ever. And of course, this is where you see a bit more of connective tissue to episode 9, perhaps, right? This is perhaps some funding that the post Empire was trying to do for the contingency plans of Emperor Palpatine here to recreate his living body, his life force, his being, all that stuff. I mean, it's connecting some way, shape, or form here, whether you like it or not. So get ready for that. But the question is, again, what does she have to benefit here? Of course, she was a communications officer on Moff Gideon's ship, and now she's with the New Republic. But is she still in league with the Empire? Perhaps she's playing a long game here, making it seem like she's a part of the New Republic, but actually secretly still helping Moff Gideon and the Empire in some regards. But is she also trying to, on the flip side, trying to prove her loyalty to the New Republic by kind of baiting people into these former, Imperial officers and workers, and trying to see if they still have ties and allegiances to that group, or if they're breaking the law? Was she put up to this perhaps by like a Moff Gideon or something like that? And he said, like, he knows too much, please take him out or have him in jail. I mean, I'm just trying to think through why she fries his brains at the end of the episode. What does she have to gain from that? I guess I don't know. There's a lot to be learned from this episode at this point. And I have many questions about where it's going to go because we've now got these two main threads here, right? It's the aftermath of Moff Gideon's capture, and then we just got closure on Din Djarin getting redeemed in his culture. So are these stories going to link up again? Is this the plot thread of the Rangers of the New Republic show that was canceled that we saw uh, being kind of teased at the end of season 2 of The Mandalorian? I don't know, but we'll have to put a pin in that one. What does she have to benefit here? Or what side do we think she's working on? What do you think? I would love to know. I'm going to pose this question on Twitter in the next couple of days here to see what you all think. Because, I mean, I think you could certainly make an argument for just about any of those options on the table right now. And of course, Katie O'Brien is doing an excellent job not letting all the cards out on the table here when it comes to this. I think she's doing an amazing work here in the series overall, especially when it comes to crafting this character, Aaliyah Kane. Now, here's a question that I have again from this episode. This episode is called The Convert. But who is the convert in this episode? And again, there are many options here. Is it literally Bo-Katan? Is she the convert? We see her at the end with this new group of Mandalorians who are a sect that she was kind of warring against in a way, who believe in a certain creed and whatnot. But now she's been redeemed in their eyes. And of course, she had that moment with Din Djarin at the end of episode 2, where she saw him completing this ritual that she had downed so long. That perhaps maybe she is starting to become a believer too, in many regards. I don't know. So maybe she is the convert to the ways of the Children of the Watch, or the Watch, or whatever they want to call themselves now. Maybe she is it. Perhaps it is L52. Perhaps it is Dr. Pershing. Maybe he's the convert. Maybe he's so enthralled with the New Republic and the fact that his research and work, the things that he's doing, are actually going to a quote unquote good thing in his eyes. He sees the work that he's doing for the New Republic. He likes the job. He likes that he's not doing evil anymore, I guess, in his mind. So perhaps he's the convert. I mean, you see him at the beginning of the episode. Of course, in the same opera hall where a famous conversation took place in episode 3, the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise. I'm sure many of you caught that as you were going through the episode. And he seems very apologetic about what he's been through and how he got to this point. But he seems that he's thrilled that there was amnesty granted, that there was compassion so far in what he's been doing, and how he hasn't been mistreated. Similar to how the Empire mistreated folks who would probably have been in similar situations. It's not like Rebels really got a lot of chances to flip the switch. You know what I mean? We never really got to see that. So I'm sure there are some folks here that did that, but usually they just dispose of them. The Empire disposes of folks, whereas the New Republic seems to be giving people chances to prove their value, become a beneficial member of society, etc. So he's it. Lastly, there's a good argument to be made too that Aaliyah Kane is the other convert, but that also is the question of, you have to assume that she is converting to the ways of the New Republic. So there's also, that chance is out there too. Now, lastly, what I wanted to bring up in this episode is the fact that the Bo-Katan of it all. She is at the end of the episode now with this group of Mandalorians who had a different ideology than her, but because of circumstance, she now fits into them, and she can, as long as she abides by the way, she can leave at any time, of course. She's welcome there. She's a member of their crew. They're going to protect her just as much as they can. But is she going to find a home with this group of Mandalorians? Is she the convert? I mean, frankly, that might be a great answer or question for the next couple of episodes here. But there's the outstanding question too of the Mythosaur. She talks to Din Djarin at the beginning of the episode about if he saw anything in the living waters, and he's like, "No, I didn't see a thing. I slipped, I went under, etc." She's the only one that saw that the Mythosaur is down there. And she didn't tell him that it's down there. She never made mention of it. She never said, "Hey, I think there's a Mythosaur down there." No. I think she might be, I don't know what her long-term game plan is here, but she may be, like I surmised last week's episode, that she may perhaps be using that as a tool or resource in order to have more claim to a potential Mandalorian throne down the line. It's a valuable argument to be made. I think so for sure. Let's just say they didn't add that in there and have Din not see it for the conflict to not potentially be there. I think all cards are on the table at this point in regards to Bo-Katan's loyalties and where she is and all this stuff. So let's just keep another pin on this because, again, unfortunately I've been saying this a lot in the episode here. Keep putting pins and stuff because I just don't have answers for this stuff right now. We're speculating at this point in regards to what was presented to us. Clearly, she's now with this group of Mandalorians. I don't know where it goes next from there in terms of their story. Maybe they go back to Mandalore. Maybe more Mandalorians come into the fray. I don't know where they go next with it. There's that group of ties at the beginning. Who sent those ties? Is that Moff Gideon's troops? Is it another raging warlord out in the outskirts of the unknown regions where the remnants of the Empire went? Who knows? And it all probably ties back to what's happening on Coruscant right now, which is going to be fascinating to me. I'm so thrilled with how this episode came out, and I hope that you are just as much at home theorizing about all the nooks and crannies of it all, because I think it's going to be really pivotal and important to crafting the overall story that season 3 of The Mandalorian is going to present here, because I think we're just touching the tip of the iceberg for it all. And of course, we're getting a brand new episode on Wednesday titled The Foundling, which is going to be directed by, of course, none other than Carl Weathers, who is Grief Karga on the show. But The Foundling, that could mean a lot of things. Is that Grogu? Is there going to be a Grogu-focused episode? Who knows? Who knows? Maybe we get some Order 66 flashbacks in this episode. Maybe there's Ahsoka tie-in. Who knows? We could see. And I'm very excited to get into all that with you all next week as we break down another episode of The Mandalorian. How are you all doing at home with The Mandalorian? Are you loving it so far? Are you hating it? Is this episode rubbing you the wrong way? Maybe something you didn't expect? I don't know. Let's talk about it. Hit us up on all the social media channels: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Hive. We're available on it all. And be sure to follow us on all those channels because Star Wars Celebration is coming just around the corner in a very short couple of weeks here. And you don't, trust me, you don't want to miss out on our coverage here. I've got a lot of stuff planning. I've got a lot of stuff being planned right now. So get ready for all that. More information is going to be announced soon on our social media channels. I'm doing some checks on some stuff here to try and create a great experience for all of us at home, to create community, foster a wonderful, fun time, just to do our best in all that stuff. So I think you're going to have a lot of fun with it. So just be sure to follow us on our social channels so you don't miss out on any of the cool stuff that we've got going on here. So with that, folks, that is all that I had for this week's episode. I hope that you enjoyed it. Be sure to give us some feedback on how you've been liking these change-up episodes, more discussion-based as opposed to plot points and all that stuff. Love to hear what you're thinking. But we'll be back very soon on Wednesday with a brand new episode with Mrs. Forsko's Conversations, Elise King, talking about the brand new Bad Batch episode, Pabu. So you don't want to miss out on that. Make sure you're followed, subscribed or following us on all the podcast sites that you prefer to get your podcasts, whether it be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Amazon Music. You know, we're on all of them. Or if not, reach out to us and we'll try our best to get on that podcast site one way, shape, or form. So until then, folks, may the Force be with you. Take care.